Now it's time for my prospective guest on the programme, and amid the support from across Europe and across the world for the people of Ukraine, a new event is kicking off here in France today. Le Voyage en Ukraine, or A Journey to Ukraine, aims to enable the French cultural world to support Ukraine's artistic community and the rest of the people there as well, of course. 4 months of events kicking off then with support from artists here for the Ukrainian counterparts. Well, joining us now live from Kyiv is one of those working behind the scenes for the project, the Ukrainian philosopher Volodymyr Yermolenko. He's also chief editor of UkraineWorld and president as well of the cultural and human rights organisation PEN Ukraine. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today. We're going to talk about the event in just a few minutes' time, but first of all, just tell us what it's like living in Kyiv on a daily basis. I mean, virtually nightly bombings there and drone attacks.
Yes, you're right. There are nightly bombings, and right now we have air alert again. And I'm living in a Kyiv suburb. So, for example, my kids are in the school, and I need to go to take them out of the school right now in a few moments. We had a very, very harsh attack a few days ago on the 29th of November when about 600 drones were sent to Kyiv and about 40 missiles, and tragically, every such attack produced deaths. People are killed, people are wounded, and there was a recent attack on Dnipro, and we all see in the photos of children that were killed. So it's like this. We also living very often without electricity right now. I don't have electricity in my apartment. That means I don't have water. And for example, our elevators are not working. So we have some accumulators, of course, and there are generators outside that people are using, the gasoline generators to get some electricity. So this is like this, more or less.
And is there anywhere to feel safe?
Well, yes, of course, you can feel okay, and it depends on where you are. For example, if you go to the more frontline cities, like in a few days we will go to Kherson, which is really a city bombarded every day by the Russian troops, which are located only some 5 kilometers from the city across the river. Or we will go to Kharkiv region, which is also closer to the front line. But basically, no matter where you are, Russians are, well, all the Ukrainian cities are reachable by drones, all the Ukrainian cities are reachable by Russian missiles. So in a way, it depends what you mean by safety. It doesn't mean that any place in Ukraine is safe, but at the same time, we are here, we are living here, we stay here. Our army stays on its positions. Nobody wants to, of course, nobody is going to move.
And of course, these ongoing peace talks with shuttle diplomacy between diplomats. I mean, is there any hope that anything's actually going to come of that?
Of course, we hope, and of course, Ukraine needs peace because, well, it's a kind of a hellish situation when you have your people, your friends, your family members wounded, killed, and of course we're suffering that from over 10 years since 2014. But at the same time, we also understand that Russia wants more than just a few territories, a few cities. Russia wants to destroy Ukraine as an entity. Russia wants to expand into Europe militarily. Russia wants to divide Europe again as it did in 1945 and doesn't hide these intentions. So the question is, what is the sustainable peace? And I hear from the Europeans, I hear from the Americans that this understanding is there, that people are thinking about how not to allow Russia to attack again, how not to allow Russia to continue this war. But of course, if the discussion is only about, for example, territories that Ukraine needs to reject some of its territories, it's not going to lead us to a sustainable peace.
Tell us then about this event that's happening here in France and how you're able to contribute to it from there in Kyiv.
Well, look, I'm just watching from the Facebook what is happening. I know that Ukrainian Institute and the French Institute are making this whole season of Ukraine in France, which will last for 4 months. And yesterday there was a huge event. I'm proud to say that it was co-moderated by my wife, Tatiana Harkova. So I'm here with kids. We have 3 kids. I'm in Kiev, and she's moderating this event. And there will be other big events. I think something around 11th and 12th of December, and then in January, February. Our book with Tatiana is coming out in France in February, I hope, and I hope it will also give a certain way to look at Ukrainian situation right now, at the Russian aggression, because it's a book of reportage, but also a book of reflection. And there are many other events, the theater events, the literature events. We have, fortunately, more and more Ukrainian writers translated into French, like Yarina Chornohuz or Artem Chapai or Natalka Vorozhbit or Sofia Andrukhovich or Andrei Kurkov and many, many others. So hopefully the French audience is able to read more and more books from Ukrainian in French.
And does it help having these kind of events going on, not just here in France, but elsewhere, perhaps across Europe, across the world, indeed, to lift spirits of people there in Kyiv, to make particularly the artistic community there in Kyiv feel that people are out there supporting?
Look, of course it helps, because Ukraine was silenced for many centuries, and the whole history of Eastern Europe was rewritten by the kind of Russian imperial lands, starting from the 18th century. And therefore, I think that many people in France and French-speaking community and all over Europe, when we look at the Eastern Europe in the medieval times, at the Baroque times, they just see only Russia, which is not the case. Russia is very recent formation. I would say that it is formation that is old only a few hundred years, while the history of Ukraine, the history of different peoples in Ukraine, starting from for example, very early pre-modern cities. Some archaeologists are saying that the first cities in the world were basically in today's Ukraine, or we can say about the Greek world and antique world that was developing in the Black Sea. All that history is so interesting and so diverse, and it's time to discover it for Ukrainians and by Ukrainians and with Ukrainians.
Good to talk to you on the programme today. Thanks very much for being with us. We'll let you go off to sort out your kids as well. Volodymyr Yermolenko, thanks very much for being with us there. From Kyiv, philosopher there, and also from the cultural and human rights organisation PEN Ukraine, and also chief editor of UkraineWorld.